I've hit a wall. Hi, I'm Kent and welcome to Turn a Wood Bowl. Today we're going to talk about hitting the wall, the wood turning wall. Yes, we all do it, and there can be many walls that we hit. I've hit many walls, and I'm going to share some of the stories of the walls that I've hit with you in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about the different types of walls that you're going to hit when you turn wood bowls. The first wall that you might hit is the knowledge wall. There is so much to take in. You may be thinking that if you're a woodworker like I was, that, well, wood turning is not that much different. It's just a couple new tools and a lathe, no big deal. Actually, wood turning is completely different than woodworking if you think about it. The only common variable is that we're using wood. So if you think about what happens when we're woodworking, we're typically taking pieces of lumber and we're cutting them to exact dimensions and working them and then fitting them together to construct a project. In wood turning, we do exactly the opposite. We work with one piece of wood and we remove material until we have the shape or the finished project that we want to create. So in many ways, they're exactly opposite. And because of that, getting started with wood turning in and of itself can be a wall that you hit because there's so much information coming at you. How do I mount a piece on the lathe? What tools do I use? So on and so forth. Actually, I developed a PDF called 21 Pitfalls of Wood Bowl Turning and How to Avoid Them. Yeah, I know this sounds like a plug, and it is, but in reality, I did create this so that you can understand exactly some of these initial things that are going to be a problem for you when you first start wood turning, and you will be able to avoid them because you'll have this information. So you might want to check that out. It's ready for download. You can read it right now. Besides the initial overwhelming amount of information that comes at us, what happens to us and why many of us hit a wall is there is an incline of progress. So we like to think that, well, I'm going to start turning and I'm going to start over here, and in a little bit of time, I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be able to turn anything I want effortlessly. In reality, this graph does not go at a nice clean angle and you don't climb this slope and you just get there. Instead, what happens is we start climbing this slope and then we have a skill setback. For instance, maybe you start turning and you're successful in that and you want to start doing a different skill, or you want to learn about mounting a bowl blank to the lathe a little bit differently. Well, it takes some time to get proficient with that or to figure it out. And you may have a setback where you reach a plateau on this graph. Instead of going up at your nice angle, you're plateauing for a while. And then you figure it out and then you start climbing again, which is great. So keep that in mind, that there's going to be many different things like that where you're going to have moments where everything flows really well and you're having a great time, but then you get hung up and you have to figure out the next skill. And again, that's why I developed all the courses that I have on my website. And I know that it sounds like I'm plugging this stuff, but the reality is I want to help you be able to turn the bowls that you imagine. And what that means is all of the skills and everything that we do when we're turning, as far as how we use the tool and how we mount the bowl to the lathe, all of that really needs to become second nature, where you're not really thinking about it. So it's in the background and you can step forward as an artist and start creating and really focus on the shape of the bowl and what you want to achieve. If you think about it, it's not that different than many other things. When we learned to drive as a teenager, it was very unnerving at first. If you think about it, if you can recall those days, it was very unnerving to have to think about, how do I operate this vehicle, and what do I do in this situation, and what happens when I come to this intersection, and what about those cars over there, and all of that. And that's what happens when you first learn a new skill. But now if you think about it, if you think about the last time you drove, wherever it was that you started and where you got to in that last trip that you traveled in your vehicle, there's a good chance you don't even remember putting the car into drive and the other vehicles that were around you and what you did as far as pressing the pedal and and steering. You probably don't even realize you did all of that. Well, that's the ultimate goal by building up your skills and learning all of these nuances and spending time learning all of the wood bowl turning so that you get through those walls and those little bit of hardships, and you have the skill set where, again, it becomes second nature. You just go to the lathe and you think, wow, this piece of wood is spectacular. I think that I want to make this, and you just make it. That is the ultimate goal, and that's why I put all this material together for you so that you guys can learn exactly how to get to that stage. So it's just like driving now. You just don't even think about it. You get in the car and you're moving. If you have to stop and think about, wait a minute, how did I get to this road that I'm on right now? Did I go through, oh yeah, I started the car and I put it in drive, and then I moved a little bit forward, then I applied the brake, and then I applied the accelerator, and then I turned, and then as I was going down the road, I had to keep steering and keep the car in a certain. You don't think like that, and you can get that way with wood bowl turning. So the skills can be a wall. Another type of wall that you can hit is an incident or an accident. Yeah, it can happen. You can have an incident that's pretty shocking or that scares you and makes you want to stop. Again, I highly recommend not to stop, to keep moving. But when it comes to an incident or an accident that you have, you need to stop what you're doing for a moment and figure out exactly what happened. Because unless you understand what you did to make that incident occur, then you most likely will repeat it, and you're also going to be fearful that it could happen again. But when you understand what happened, you can counter that and you can learn from it. Everything that happens, positive or negative, is a learning experience. So you have to look at incidents as a learning experience. All right, let me tell you about what happened to me. When I was first learning to turn, I got down to the end of a bowl blank and I was taking off the little nub at the very bottom of the bowl blank. And I had two things that were going on that I was unaware of or I wasn't paying close enough attention to. Number one, I had my tool rest too high and I was coming at the nub at a steep angle. And the other thing that I didn't do is I didn't tighten my tail stock really well. Now, if you're removing the nub off the bottom of a bowl, you want to tighten that tailstock once before you remove any of that material and get that nub whittled down. The reason being is if you have a small nub there and you tighten a tailstock, the tailstock's going to crush it and it's going to make your bowl turn off center. So you want to tighten it once before you start working that area and then leave it. And then as you nibble it down, just leave it and you'll be fine. What I didn't do is I didn't tighten it at all when I first started. And so I had a loose fitting and I was coming at it at this angle. So what happened was I got under the center line and my spindle detail gouge, which I was using to remove that little nub, worked its way under there and pried the bowl off of the tailstock because the tailstock was loose as well. And the bowl rolled and basically spun right up the spindle detail gouge shaft right into my face. And I got to tell you, it was startling. I was shocked and I didn't see it. I mean, our eyes and our brain can only register things so quickly, and I didn't see it at all. And my first thought was, out of nowhere, somebody just punched me in the face. That's what I thought. I thought, who in the world would have punched me in the face? Now, I was working in a shop with other people, so it seemed as if somebody had just come around with a right hook and just nailed me right in the face, and I didn't see any of it. And I was thrown back away from the lathe for a second, and as my brain's going through this thought process of who punched me in the face, I started to hear this wobbling sound of this wom, 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 kind of like a coin when it's spinning on it and comes to a stop. And it was my bowl on the ground and it was wobbling and coming to a stop on the ground. And I thought, why is my bowl on the ground? Anyway, it's quite startling when that happens. My face shield luckily saved me and it bared witness to what happened. I had a streak that went right down the center of my face shield from where the bowl hit it and scuffed the plastic of the shield. And quite honestly, it's also a reason why you want a full face mask, full frame face mask. I see a lot of people turning with the visor ones that have just the plastic there. They can work to a certain degree, but those really are just to deflect material that's coming at you, light material like dust and things like that. They're not designed to take an impact. And even that was not designed to take an impact. What happened was that bull hit me square right above the teeth, okay? And the shield or the plastic of the faceplate essentially distributed that impact across my nose and my mouth and my chin. So it basically all of this area took the hit instead of just right there. Had I not had that face shield on, I most likely would have cut my lip at a minimum and most likely would have taken out my front teeth, which would have been really bad. So the face shield saved me on that one, but it's not foolproof. I still took a pretty good hit and I was sore for quite some time. Now, that being said, I stepped back from the lathe and I tried to figure out what happened, and I went back and looked and I saw that the tool rest was up higher than center, which there was no reason for that to be. It was higher than center, and I realized that if in that configuration, I basically pried that out, and at that angle, I basically gave the bowl a path to come right up into my face. And so I figured it out. Now, it was a little unnerving, and the type of wood I was turning, I was a little leery of turning it because it's really dense, heavy, hard wood, and I was a little bit afraid for a while of that coming back up and hitting me. But I got over it, and I realized, okay, essentially, let's make sure that tool rest is down and my cutting tool is on the center line, and let's tighten that tailstock before we start nibbling away that little nub on the bottom of the bowl. So learn the lesson from it. As hard as some of these lessons can be to learn them that way, they are lessons. So learn the lesson and don't let it stop you. It's kind of like getting back on a horse. You've got to get back in there and get right back on the lathe and turn. If you have something like that happen and you decide, oh, I'm not going to turn for a while. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to let a day or two or a week or a month go by and then I'll feel better about it. It's like, no, You need to get right back there and turn. It's just like getting back on a horse. You've probably heard that expression. And if you're not in the horse world, it actually has literal meaning. You need to just get those cobwebs out of your head about the fear that you had, get back on the horse and realize everything's going to be fine and you'll be okay. But learn from those lessons. So hopefully nobody has any really bad injuries or anything major occur. But again, those lessons or those incidents are lessons that we need to learn from. Another issue that we can run into and a wall that we can hit is time. How could time be a wall? Well, there's a couple different reasons for this. Many people like to think of wood turning as a hobby. Well, it is a hobby. However, it's a very skill-intense hobby. And if you don't develop those skills, you're going to have struggles if you're turning too infrequently. In other words, if you come to this and you think, well, I want to turn maybe once a month and just for an hour or two and just relax and turn something on the lathe. That you can do once you've developed your skill set and your micro muscle memory, because there's a lot that has to be learned in the process of turning. So initially, when you're learning to turn, if you have big intervals between your turnings, you're going to hit a wall, because what's going to happen is every time you go to the lathe, you kind of have to relearn everything that you did a while back at the lathe. So instead, what you want to do is you want to learn at regular intervals initially, for sure. So keep that in mind. If you're turning infrequently, you may be struggling and you may be hitting a wall of frustration because it seems like everything's new each time you come back, because it sort of is. You have to relearn those skills and those muscle memories. Now, the other end of this spectrum is you may be turning too much. You may be turning every single day and you may be burning yourself out. And that's not good either, because then you don't feel like turning and you're not excited about it anymore. And that's like hitting a wall as well. So let me tell you a little story about how I learned to turn. I got to learn to turn with a group of people that met just once a week. That's it. And we would turn once per week for about, I was usually there for at least 4 or 5 hours. So it was pretty intense, but just once a week. And what would happen is, after I got done turning, for the next day or two, I would be mentally thinking about everything that I did, the things that were going well, but I would think about the things I was struggling with that I needed to learn more, and new questions would pop up. I would actually even take notes and start thinking about, oh, wait a minute, how do I do this? I need to ask somebody about that. So that was really beneficial as far as reviewing. But then by the time the week started rolling around and we're within a few days of going back to turning, I would get all excited again, and I'd start thinking of, well, I could get this bowl blank ready, and I could do this, and oh, what about that one technique that somebody was talking about or that I saw somewhere? Maybe I could try that. So the 1 week interval was really good for me because it allowed me to assess what happened, what I was doing, what I can improve on, and I mentally kind of went through the exercises, and then it gave me enough time to get excited about going back and turning. So that worked out really well. Now, the trick with that is I was very consistent. I'd turn every single week. I wouldn't skip 2 or 3 weeks here and there and just kind of come willy-nilly. It was every single week I was there, and that allowed me to build my skill sets and my micro muscle skills in my memory and my muscles. You can't underestimate how much our body remembers when we learn skills. The delicate nature of holding a bull gouge and working really fine curves, and the way we move our body and the way we do each of the different steps in that, our body remembers, and it becomes much easier when we do that repetitively. But you don't have to do it non-stop, because that's the other extreme. If you're turning all the time, you may burn yourself out and you're not excited about it. Then you just get bored and feels like a job. That's no fun either. So take some breaks, not long breaks. Don't cover up your lathe and disappear for a month or two, but take some breaks and give yourself some time to rest and renew that excitement about going back to the lathe. And then maybe set up intervals. Maybe you're going out there once or twice a week instead of every single day or all the time. And set up those intervals, and I think you'll see that the time wall that you're hitting might be overcome at that point. All right, so when it comes to hitting walls, know a few things for sure. We all hit them. There's nobody that goes from point A to point Z where they're mastering wood bowl turning without any setbacks or any walls. Everybody hits these walls. We've all done it. You're going to do it, and you can overcome it. You just need to not give up, and you need to keep moving forward. It's really that simple. Don't give up, and don't let anything that happens to you discourages you from continue turning, because as you build your skills and as you put in the time, you will get to the point where you master wood bowl turning. And it's so exciting when you get there, because it's just like driving the car. You can't tell me what you did to the car yesterday when you drove from wherever you came from to where your car is parked right now. You can't tell me all the details of what exactly you did, how much you pushed the pedal and what angle you turned the handle and all that sort of stuff. So just think of that and apply it to wood bowl turning. At a certain point, you're going to develop your skills where you're not thinking about how you're angling the bowl gouge. You're not going to think about all of the minute little details. You're just going to do it, and you're going to create the bowls that you have imagined in your mind. That's why I do all this, so that you guys can get to that point. And it's why I really wanted to convey this message to you guys too, which is super important, is don't get discouraged, don't give up, and by all means, just keep building your skills, and you will master wood bowl turning. Just know that it is not a simple casual hobby. This is not you go and you spend a couple hours playing around at the lathe and then you're just like, oh, okay, I got that. I understand it now. It's kind of like, it's like walking the dog or riding your bike. It's no big deal. I got it. No, you really do need to take some time and develop the skills. Now, once you've developed those skills, you can treat it like a casual hobby, but you don't want to set it aside for a long period of time, because we've got a lot of memory here and in our muscles that we want to maintain on a regular basis. If you've hit a wall or if you've had some incidents, leave me a comment below and share with me what wall you hit. And hopefully now you realize you can get past that wall. Just keep in mind that graph that we're going to be growing and progressing on is not an angled line that's going to take you there. There's going to be a lot of bumps and things along the way, and that's totally fine. We're all on that same path, and we all have our different setbacks. So don't be discouraged. Keep turning. All right, guys, if you like this video, do me a huge favor and click that like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribing. Check out my website, turnawoodbowl.com. I have tons of information there, plus that 21 pitfalls of wood bowl turning and how to avoid them PDF that I mentioned earlier, as well as my courses. My courses are actually structured so that you go through each of the steps that we do through wood bowl turning. So any of that confusion in that is quickly erased in the courses, because you can go back to those lessons and you can learn exactly where you might be struggling or where you might have hit a wall, and you can learn exactly how to overcome that and move forward. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy turning.